You're listening to the Monocle Daily, first broadcast on the 16th of June 2025 on Monocle Radio. Israel and Iran continue trading blows as Israel promises imminent victory. What options does Iran have? Switzerland's parliament debates the length, necessity and propriety of parental leave. And does a restaurant meal taste any better if it's cooked in front of you? I'm Andrew Muller. The Monocle Daily starts now. Hello and welcome to the Monocle Daily, coming to you from our studios here at Dufourstrasse 90 in Zurich. I'm Andrew Muller. My guests Myriam, Zumbühl and Priska Amstutz will discuss the day's big stories. Plus we'll hear from Noah Horowitz, CEO of Art Basel, as the annual art fair gets underway not far from here. Stay tuned, all that and more coming up right here on the Monocle Daily. This is the Monocle Daily. I'm Andrew Muller, and we will start in the Middle East, where Israel and Iran are continuing to trade airstrikes. Within the last few hours, Israel has struck targets which appear to include Iranian state broadcaster IRIB, which was briefly forced off air. This followed a direct threat to the station from Israel, as well as an evacuation notice for the district of Tehran in which it is located. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has boasted that Israel now controls the skies over Iran and is on the way to achieving victory. Iranian authorities report that at least 224 people have been killed by Israeli attacks since hostilities commenced on Friday. I'm joined first of all from South Bend, Indiana, by Julie Norman, Senior Associate Fellow on the Middle East at RUSI in London. Julie, first of all, when Benjamin Netanyahu talks about achieving victory, has he been clear as to what that will look like?
Well, good evening, Andrew. I think what we've seen is that definition shifting quite quickly over the last several days. First, on Friday, the initial message was very much in regards to depleting Iran's nuclear capabilities, destroying their nuclear program. Really, within less than 24 hours, that shifted to Netanyahu speaking pretty openly about a goal of regime change, about hoping that Iranian people rise up against the regime. And I think we're starting to see perhaps even another shift going into this week with the targeting of certainly non-nuclear sites with media offices, with other kinds of targets that are certainly seeming to be expanding the mandate quite a bit. So I would say this is not unusual for Netanyahu. We saw this with the Gaza war too, where something that starts with a somewhat relatively narrow aim grows quite quickly, and the end game then becomes much harder to see.
I mean, Julie, this is a narrative we've seen quite a few times in recent decades, this idea that if you intervene against an unpopular regime, then the people will rise up and do the rest. By and large, however, the people tend to rally round the flag when coming under fire from an enemy they may dislike themselves almost as much as the regime they dislike does. And apologies to any listeners who entirely lost the thread of that sentence. But you know what I'm saying. Do we get any sense yet that the Iranian people are willing to heed the call of Benjamin Netanyahu as the liberator of Persia?
It certainly does not look that way right now, Andrew. And I think that was very idealistic thinking on Netanyahu's part, that that's what would happen. Certainly, there is a lot of discontent across Iran with the government, with the regime, and this has been long lasting. And this came out in full force several years ago with the women life freedom protests that many might remember. But even many who are critical of the regime are saying, look, if we're getting fired upon, if we're getting struck by Israeli strikes, this is our first priority is first survival and resisting against what is seemed as an unprovoked attack, rather than kind of starting a revolution at that moment. So I think even those who might be sympathetic to a different kind of government, this is not going to happen at that moment. And if anything, people are going to again kind of rally around the state and rally around the government, and also around what many people see as a right to have a nuclear program there.
I mean, does the Iranian regime right now appear to have any good options? I mean, Netanyahu's boast that Israel controls Iran's skies does not appear to be an idle one. We've seen little, if any, of Iran's air force, if indeed it still has one, and though some Iranian missiles have landed on Israel with fatal consequences in a few instances, they have been a minority of what Iran has launched.
It's true. And I would say Iran is somewhat limited in their options. They were very weak going into this conflict in terms of their military capabilities. And also in the past, Iran has always relied very heavily on other groups in the region that many call Iran's proxies, but really kind of their partners like Hezbollah. Hezbollah also extremely weakened last fall by Israel and is not able to still play that same role that they would have in the past. I would say Iran does still have some options, some they've been very vocal about. That includes targeting international, particularly American bases and assets in the region. They have not done that yet, I think knowingly aware that if the U.S. enters this, they will be in an even worse position, for Iran to have to combat against the Israeli or against the American military as well. Other options include, and apparently under consideration, closing strategic waterways, the Strait of Hormuz, for example, where about a fifth of the world's natural gas goes and about a quarter of the world's oil flows through that. So trying to target other kinds of things in the region that would have a big global impact on economics as well as just beyond military targets. So there's still some things that they have not done yet, but I would say right now the emphasis still seems to be on causing the most damage and pressure directly on Israel and quite notably Israeli citizens at the moment.
Just finally, Julie, you're right, obviously, to point out that as of this recording, Iran has not done anything that might draw the United States into the war. But so far, at least, the United States, at least as expressed by its president, Donald Trump, doesn't seem all that interested in participating. He is, of course, heading off to the G7 in Canada. But he earlier today suggested that perhaps Russian President Vladimir Putin may care to play mediator. Does that sort of suggest that Trump, if he can stay out of this, will stay out of this?
Yeah, I really don't think Trump knows exactly which direction to move at this moment. And we've seen this inconsistency over the last several days and really over the last several weeks and months with Trump, clearly preferring this negotiated settlement, this diplomatic process, but Israel opting to go the other way. And I think Netanyahu essentially gambling that if Israel took this move, that Trump would go along with them, especially if it was seen as initially successful. There is some indication Trump may still do that, but I would point out in the U.S., even the Republican Party is very split on this between the more hawkish stand with Israel, go against Iran wing and the more MAGA isolationist stay out of it if it's not our direct problem wing. And so I see Trump trying to toggle between those two, but it's really going to be what the U.S. decides to do about this that's going to have a big impact in which direction it goes. Obviously, Putin has been, talked about as a particular mediator. That seems to be where Trump is trying to pass the baton at the moment. Putin does notably have good relations with both Israel and Iran. He's one of the few leaders who has that. But I think for obvious reasons to listeners, he's not seen as the most reliable or credible mediator these days by most of the world.
Julie Norman, thank you very much for joining us. You're listening to The Daily on Monocle Radio. This is the Monocle Daily. I'm Andrew Muller, and joining me now here in our Zurich studio is Myriam Zumbühl, columnist at NZZ and regular writer for Confect, Monocle's sister journal, and Monocle's senior news editor Chris Chermak. Chris, to you first. Here we are in Zurich. Why? What are we doing here?
I mean, do we need a reason, Andrew? It's very exciting to be here. We don't need a reason for these things, but we are partly here, I suppose, because it's Art Basel week, and that is something that we're going to be speaking about later on this show as well. So, we're just taking an opportunity. We're taking this show on the road. We're here in Zurich this week. We're in Paris next week. I mean, it's coming from everywhere.
It really is. Myriam, you will be familiar to listeners to Monocle Radio's weekend programs. You're a regular guest here in our Zurich studio, but this is your first time on the Monocle Daily. No pressure or anything. So first of all, introduce yourself, if you would, to our listeners.
Well, what more can I say? You already did a beautiful introduction. Yes, so I'm a writer and I'm an an author and occasionally also a filmmaker from Zurich. And I always enjoy coming here. It's always lively and you learn about new things, what's going on around the world. So I always enjoy coming here.
But at NZZ, where you do write a column, for example, in recent weeks, what have you been columnising about?
Well, so my focus at the NZZ is food. So I write about food and I deliver a weekly recipe, including a story and some background to it. And just last weekend, we had a so-called bergforelle, a mountain trout that I, made a beautiful recipe, how to grill it. And I got a couple of feedbacks, mostly from passionate fishers who, how can I put this? Very kindly pointed out a few things that I supposedly don't know yet.
What, you had middle-aged men on the internet pointing things out to you? That must be
probably exciting. Yes.
Well, I get the sense that you're making everybody very hungry already, so we should move along, and we will start in Switzerland, where a public and parliamentary debate is underway on parental leave. To be clear, nobody is arguing that parental leave is a bad thing, but some are arguing that there should be a good deal more of it. Currently, new Swiss mothers receive 14 weeks of paid parental leave, fathers 2 weeks. The somewhat self-explaining Family Time initiative, propounded by a coalition comprised largely of centre to centre-left political parties, wants to expand this to 18 weeks each, but without one parent being able to transfer their weeks to the other. Another more conservative idea favours 20 weeks in total. The mother would keep her 14 weeks. Fathers have to take 4. They can split the remaining 2 however they like. It occurs at this point that we should have asked listeners to get notepads and pens before we started. Myriam, first of all, though, even these numbers if not by global standards, but certainly the standards of the developed world, they are quite miserly. At the other end of the spectrum, we have Norway, for example. Parents get 49 weeks, both of them, on full wages, or 59 weeks if they're willing to struggle along on 80%. Why is Switzerland so, well, I've already used the word miserly, parsimonious about this?
Well, I don't know. I actually don't know. I think maybe if you look back in history, when have women, you knew this even, I forgot, when did women start to vote in Switzerland?
It was 73, 74-ish.
So we're somewhat behind, may I say that, as a Swiss person. Everything takes a little bit longer in Switzerland. And I think when it comes to this, so taking 49 weeks off just because you had a baby, isn't that what are you going to do in all this time? I have friends who, if somebody has a baby, my circle of friends said, what are you doing all day? And I think we're just not so used to not working. There was another debate whether we're going to have like 2 more weeks of official holidays, and we said no. So this is, we're not so good with, taking time off. We're very good at working and functioning. And but I think, here's what I think. I listened to the debate today a little bit, and it was interesting also to hear how many men have an opinion about this. As a woman, I'm like, that's really interesting. I come from a point of, I do think that the first weeks of a child's life are the most important ones. I know very many young fathers who actually want to spend time with their children. And I think if there is a way to do it, we should do it.
Chris, how different is this in the vast range of countries in which you have lived?
Very widely different, particularly between the US and Germany. So that's why I thought this was an interesting thing to talk about. I was always struck by Germany being also a country that you don't necessarily expect to be very progressive on this, but actually it is, because both you have around 12, 14 weeks, I believe, is for mothers, that is statutory for companies to pay. But beyond that, what you have is Elternzeit, parental leave, that goes to 12 to 14 months. Yeah. Which the government actually pays about 60 to 70% of your salary, and it can be split however you want. The idea being you get 1 year, you both have to take at least 2 months, and then you can split the rest however you want. So if it is a case of a family where the father wants to take more of the role, they can do that. Although I will say I had some interesting situations. I remember when I lived in Germany of friends who had children where the father wanted to take advantage of this, working for an international company me, I won't necessarily name names, but they would say, why are you the one doing this?
Myriam, in Switzerland, where are the divides on this? Is there a conservative cohort still saying, come on, it's a child, how hard can it be?
Yes, I think it's two things. It's the political parties. So, of course, it's the more liberal parties like Die Grünen who support an initiative like that. And then, interestingly enough, it also, the fact that this initiative comes from the canton of Valle, which is the state where a lot of wine is produced, and the canton of Ticino, which is more, already has Italian flavors and sort of La Dolce Vita style. So also has a lot to say. But as a Swiss, it makes me laugh. We're such a tiny country, but then we're so diverse. Of course, in the Ticino, they want to have time, spent with their children, whereas here in Zurich, where we're more. We call it Zwinglianisch. It's like you work. You're here to work, and you work hard and good, and so it also shows how diverse this country actually is.
Chris, there is an angst besetting most countries in the developed world to one degree or another about declining birth rates, smaller families, etc. But do you get a sense that a lot of them, with the possible exception of Norway, are trying to avoid facing the reality that if you want to fix this, you need to make having families, especially for women, just less expensive and easier?
Absolutely, and that's something I think if I go to my other country, the United States, is interesting, because you would think there would be more of a debate about that. And every now and then, even in conservative circles, that debate bubbles up because, frankly, the Republican Party should be the party of the family. It should want to encourage people to have children. With that comes things like parental leave. So sometimes there is a debate, but it never really gathers a huge amount of steam. Instead, the only thing you have seen a bit in the US by comparison, and maybe this goes to your point as well of just how norms are changing, companies are starting to just offer it by themselves. So you are seeing companies, even bigger companies like Starbucks, offering some paid parental leave because they realize that it is the right thing to do, and they want to encourage families, they want to encourage their employees to stay with the company even if they have families. So that's the one area where you may be seeing some difference. But yes, I totally agree with you. Why governments aren't more willing to do this when we are all facing declining birth rates is a surprise, and something that gets discussed in the media, but it never really takes off.
And just finally on this, Myriam, is this likely to lead at some point to one of those, because I know this is an aspect of Swiss life which mesmerizes and bemuses outsiders, will we be seeing one of those referendums of which you people are so famously fond?
No.
Is that merely how you would vote, or is that a statement of fact?
I think that's a statement of fact.
Well, we will now move along. Chris Chermak, you may resume production duties, but we will doubtless hear more from you later in our week here in Zurich. Still with us is Myriam Zumbühl, and we are also joined now by Priska Amstutz, who is the head of marketing at Kunsthaus Zurich. Welcome to the Monocle Daily. It's your first time on this show as well, so as we asked Myriam earlier, please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yes, hello, I'm Priska. I have been on the show on Sunday with Tyler a few times. I used to be co-editor-in-chief of Tagesanzeiger, the other big Swiss newspaper, and I have changed side. I'm now on the communication side of Kunsthaus Zurich since last fall, and enjoy this role very much.
How big a shift in that was that? Because how big a shift in that was that? You know what I'm trying to say. Because usually journalists and public relations are it's a curious relationship, in some respects cooperative, in other respects not. Is it a huge leap in mindset for you?
It has been, and it still is. It's interesting. If it's communication about the art, it's a very nice job, because all my former colleagues, we like to talk about the beautiful exhibitions and Zurich Art Weekend that just happened. If it's more on the political side of communications about the financing situation or provenance discussions, it has been a huge leap, because I understand what my former colleagues want to know from me, and I can't always give them the right answers in the right time. So it has a bit also been a school in being a diplomat. So maybe that will be the next station.
Well, one of the reasons that the Daily and the Briefing are coming from Zurich this week is the proximity of Art Basel, which is occurring about an hour away from here by train. However, by way of fanfare, Zurich just hosted Zürich Art Weekend, which was, as the name very strongly insinuates, a weekend of art in Zurich. The Kunsthaus was one of many participating institutions unveiling work from Jeffrey Gibson, the Native American artist who mashes traditional art with contemporary and or pop influences. To that exhibition, first of all, Priska, that's still available to see, right? Because I'm quite partial to a bit of Jeffrey Gibson. I would like to go along and have a look.
Yes, it will be seen almost 2 years because it's part of a new project we have at Kunsthaus. It's called Art for Everyone because it's in the public space. It's in the entry hall of the new building by David Chipperfield, that was opened 4 years ago. And the idea was always that this big entry hall would have show art of artists and it's a concrete building, very cool and elegant, and now it has a very colorful installation by Jeffrey Gibson. It's really wonderful, and it's open to the public during opening hours of the museum, and it will be on show for almost 2 years.
Because I did sneak a peek and looked at some of the pictures online, and that juxtaposition of Gibson's extremely colourful works with that somewhat forbidding brutalist concrete background, I guess that was the contrast you were looking for.
Yes, exactly. It's there will be other shows there, and then there will be other styles, but for a first big project to give life to that hall, it's the most wonderful combination, and it gives a sudden such a different atmosphere and style, and people look at it and stand and sit, and I think everyone likes it because it's so colorful and there's some text that you can read. So I think children like it, and very old people like it, and everyone in between. So it's and we're very proud because it's Jeffrey Gibson's first big installation in Central Europe, and he will have a big installation at the Met in the fall, and Zurich was first, so we were happy about this.
Well, on the subject of Zurich being first, Myriam, I'll bring you back in here. How is Art Basel seen in Zurich? Was Zurich Art Weekend established, be honest here, as a kind of an introduction to Art Basel, or was this Zurich saying, no, we cannot tolerate Basel having all this attention, we will do something the same week about art, and by golly, we'll go first?
Oh, no, I think this time it was, there is a rivalry between Basel and Zurich a little bit. In Zurich, we think in Basel, they're so maybe boring. And those in Basel think that, these people in Zurich are always so busy, but of course it's a friendly, we like each other because there are so many people who live in Basel and work in Zurich. But to come back to your question, I actually really think that the Art Basel inspired the Zurich Art Weekend. I remember when it started, I thought, yeah, it's so cute now they sort of hop on the train. But I really think that the Zurich Art Weekend has established into a beautiful event just prior to Art Basel. And I have friends who travel from abroad, and so first they come to Zurich for the Zurich Art Weekend because they come to Switzerland anyway, and then on Monday they go to Basel. So they combine both. I also think it's wonderful to see how it sort of is given just like a new sort of initiative also for galleries to bring in new artists and, do more shows. And yesterday I thought it was so lovely to see people really walk around the city and go from one place to the next to discover art. And I think that's a beautiful combination of two events.
I mean, Priska, thinking back to Zurich Art Weekend, and there will be another one next year, obviously, but to entice listeners who may be thinking about it, can give us some sense of the scale of it in Zurich? Because everyone knows Art Basel, that's a huge, big deal, which basically takes over the city for a week. But in Zurich, how big a thing has the weekend become?
It has become very big now. I'd say in the last 2 or 3 years, yes, post-pandemic. It's like, I think every gallery participates, and Zurich has many, many galleries, and all the museums have a special program, and it's become quite big. So that's also why we hosted the dinner the first time, was hosted at Kunsthaus by ZAW, because I think it became too big for the venues, the previous venues. So it has become quite an important cultural date for Zurich, and it is of course also for people coming from abroad. It's very convenient. They start off the art spring here in Zurich, and it has become also. We felt that our director told me this year was really. It was really the first time that she also thought it has become now a meeting point also for very important museum directors from the whole world, from Europe.
And collectors, right? Everybody's here.
Yeah, collectors are here. They stop here and then they move on to Basel, and so it is an important thing. Yeah.
Okay, and Priska, just finally, before we move off the subject of Zurich Art Weekend and the Kunsthaus, there's a forthcoming thing at the Kunsthaus I did want to ask you about. There's going to be an enormous head. Mm-hmm. Please introduce the enormous head.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. It's also part of this Kunst für alle, Art for Everyone project. It will be a huge head, a sculpture in the garden behind the Chipperfield building of Kunsthaus. And it will be a head, and it will be called Sardos. It's inspired by a movie that Shane Connery starred in, wearing the artist, Monster Chatwin, the British artist. She always says, she explains that you have to see the movie because it stars Sean Connery in a red, like knee-high boots and kind of a loincloth situation, and so the head will be called Sardos because it's inspired by that movie, and it's a head, and you can't enter the head, and inside is a playground, so children and adults can climb up in a net that is very safe. It's 9 meters high, and then you can slide. You can have a little view at the top and then slide down at the outside. So it's art, playfulness art.
Okay, our listeners, I'm sure, are already frantically scouring various streaming platforms trying to find these images of Sean Connery in a scarlet loincloth. But once they've absorbed that, when will the head be open?
That will open end of August, and also will be on show and for usage for about 2 years.
Outstanding. But we will shift focus now from the world of art to the culinary realm. And it says here that table service is back, i.e. that there is a revival of the thing whereby your dinner is not merely brought to you, but cooked in front of you, endowing your meal with the frisson of danger that a careless chef might set light to the tablecloth. Myriam, is this really a thing? Has there been a sudden resurgence of people bringing a hot plate to your table?
Yes. I mean, actually bringing the staff to the table. We have seen it in the Michelin star gastronomy where, tartare is made to table sides and all of that. But that really has moved into more kind of brasserie style restaurants. For example, Monocle Radio has been at Grand Hotel Belvedere, right, in Wengen last week. And so the chef there, Will Gordon, he said, he was looking for an element to sort of interact with the guest a little more and also to connect and have time to chat. So they worked on a pitivier, pastetli we call it, a beef pitivier, which looks so beautiful. It's a now I can't think of the word. It's like this beautiful dough-covered piece of meat that they bring to the table, and everybody can have a look, and then they cut it open and they serve it. And this is something that I have to say I really enjoy, because whether it's a crêpe Suzette that's made tableside, or, in Zurich we have the Kronenhalle, where I don't leave if I don't have the mousse au chocolat. And the reason is, yes, it's a good mousse au chocolat, but what I love even more is, how the waiter comes and he freshly cuts these little bowls of these little nuggets of mousse au chocolat, and then he has the crème fraîche or the crème double, crème gruyère, which he sort of sizzles over it. And it's a feat. Like, we don't talk when he does it. You can really, in a way, you can admire the chef's work in one way, and it's always a table conversation. Everybody's sort of waiting for the moment to order the mousse au chocolat, and then when the crêpe Suzette is flambéed in front of your eyes. I enjoy that. I love it.
You're making everybody very hungry again, Myriam.
Let's go. Cronenhall is not too far away from here.
Priska, where are you on this? Because instinctively, and this may not surprise regular listeners, I am somebody who would basically prefer that the waiting staff bring me a menu, take my order, bring me my meal, and otherwise broadly leave me alone.
Yeah, I'm also on your side, but I just had the Mousse au Chocolat Cronenhalle 2 weeks ago, and it really, with a group of international guests, and it really is stunning. And also at Cronenhalle they serve, I think, the salmon at lunch is also brought.
They even have a voiture where they come and drive by and you can see the food. And there is one thing, I'd like to tell you one thing. So I understand, yes, you want your peace and quiet when you have lunch.
and at all other times, frankly.
But I think sometimes, so as a culinary writer, so often I realize that people have no idea how dishes are made. Sometimes they don't even know what's in it. And for a chef to bring it outside and for you to actually see, I learn a lot. Like I learn how to fillet a fish. That's where I learn it, I tell you.
I mean, Chris Cermak, you're still here. It would be weird if you weren't. You're producing the program. But do you have a view on this?
I do find there's a certain fascination with it in those few moments where it comes. Like, why not? Because I would say being at a restaurant is an experience in itself. So I would say for that reason, yes, there are moments where you want your peace and quiet, but there are other moments where you actually want, to your point, Myriam, I mean, I'm curious how things get made. So to sometimes watch it at the table, that would be a nice experience. I'd take that.
I tell you, I started to make crêpes Suzette at home after I experienced it. La Pogée, it's a ski resort. I came home, frozen. I was so cold. And then, I went to they had this little living room and there was a crêpe Suzette made for me. And I thought I was just so happy.
Priska, because you're the closest person here to being on my side on this, I'm going to introduce another prejudice here. Is like, does part of us suspect that if there is a resurgence of this, it is yet another manifestation of everything becoming a performance for social media?
Good point. Yeah,
I thought so.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, I admit.
I mean, the example Myriam mentioned, it's a very traditional, very elegant restaurant, and they do it with 1 or 2 dishes. And as a side note, the mousse au chocolat, they show it in the bowl, and then they serve you 2 or 3 tiny spoons, and then they leave with the bowl, and that's always a very hard moment because, you could have eaten the whole bowl, but that's a side note. But they do it with like 1 or 2 dishes, and it's and also I think the tray they bring it on is 100 years old and pure silver probably. So it is a very traditional thing, very beautiful. People don't really take pictures because it's a very elegant place, but I can imagine that maybe in other brasserie, easier restaurants, if this is now a new trend, it may have to do with everything is an installation and an experience to also share.
Well, okay, finally then, Myriam, let's imagine that you may have a point here. If there are listeners who would like to try this and who may be in Zurich and or have recently won a lottery, is there one particular restaurant you would recommend they go to for this experience?
Yes, I have to. I really have to. I have to say it's the Cronenhalle, the Mousse au Chocolat Cronenhalle. Yes, this is an experience. And by the way, at Cronenhalle, you're not allowed to film. Priska is right. And this is something that I actually don't like when they bring something out at the table and everybody films it. The chef is totally overlooked. They don't even know who he is. What I really enjoy is somebody telling you what it is and how it's made. That's the purpose of it. Cronenhalle, I think, yes. If you came for the art weekend and if you come for Art Basel, make a stop over there for the mousse au chocolat.
Myriam Zumbühl and Priska Amstutz and Chris Cermak, thank you all for joining us. Finally, on today's show, as we have been discussing, this is a week of art in Zurich and indeed in Basel. And earlier here in Zurich, I spoke with Noah Horowitz, CEO of Art Basel, just before he left to join the festivities for the week. Among the new events this year is an award show, which is taking place on Thursday night. And I began by asking Noah why they decided to give prizes this year.
Well, we looked across the landscape. It's a project we've been working on for several years now. And, as we look at what Art Basel is as a platform, not just a fair. We have a vision and mission really around powering the world of art, not just the art world properly, and creating connections and platforms for artists to create more opportunities. And I think in Art Basel Awards, we found a new vehicle to recognize excellence broadly within the industry, both from within the artistic landscape. So there's a few categories emerging, established, and icons for artists, but also to support and recognize patrons of arts, publications, and others that make the ecosystem go round. So we will be doing an event in Basel, the Kunstmuseum, on Thursday night this week, is to capture the shortlisted artists and other awardees. There's 36. And then in Miami in December is when we announce the winners of the different categories.
I mean, are you looking to the Art Basel Awards to become one of those great, I guess, attention getters and or argument starters in the way of other awards in the arts? Because they are, of course, invariably subjective. You're always, inevitably rather subjective, you're always going to get people going, no, it shouldn't have been them, it should have been this other thing that I personally happen to like better.
Well, all art is subjective in the end, and this is too, but we've put in place a fantastic jury of museum directors, curators from all across the world. It's very global and focused too, which I should underline. There are other awards platforms, none I think that cover the world of art as broadly as this will. And, we're very excited about it and feel that through the system, we can create more awareness of a lot of these voices as well as opportunities themselves. And in December in Miami, the winners for the artistic categories will be, receiving cash prizes, grants, as well as commissions as well. So there's a cycle that will happen as well. In Basel this week, Katharina Gross's Messeplatz project, extraordinary. Next June, there'll be 2 public commissions in the city of Basel that will come through the awards platform. So we're in the process of starting an intentional ecosystem of creation and opportunity through the platform.
I mean, obviously, this week's focus is going to be Art Basel in Basel, but the Art Basel thing continues to expand. Last year it was Paris, shortly to be Qatar. Why pick on Qatar?
We are deeply committed to entering the Middle East broadly, and then the MENA region has grown so dramatically in recent decades. And, the investment and mission that the Qatar museums have set out to create and lean into. They celebrate 20 years this fall, is extraordinary. The institutions that they've created, the institutions on the roadmap, with the Mill Art Center really is, a truly global museum that will house their collection, but also be a center for innovation, for programming, for exhibitions, is totally visionary. And, we felt very unequivocally that they were the right partner in region. And we feel that this can be an extraordinary bridging opportunity for, the cultural scene in the MENA region broadly, and hopefully put a lot of new names on the radar internationally, in much the same way that our show in Miami Beach and Hong Kong over the years has done. And I think in terms of success metrics, and I think when we really look at what we're proud of as a business over time, if we look into the Miami miracle, so to speak, taking Latin American art and making it contemporary art writ large, taking artists from across the Asian diaspora and putting them on the international map into the contemporary art scene with a capital A, are real things to hold our hat on. And of course, it's not an Art Basel thing per se, but we're part of driving that. And I think as we look out in, 10, 20 years plus, one of the, the highest order goals of this is to take artists and cultural actors from the MENA region broadly and make them not just artists from the Middle East, but really help play a part in advancing their positions as great contemporary artists and makers, in the broadest sense. So we're very excited about this.
Well, on that thought, we should talk finally about the state of the art market in general, because the last couple of years in particular have not really been a golden era in that respect.
Art, as in any economic industry, has its ebbs and flows. And there's different cycles. Art follows wealth at some level, but the spectrums of buyers have continued to grow and diversify. Despite the fact that there was a setback in the market last year, the second year running, we see a lot more buying at lower ends of the market. So we're seeing more collectors come through, more buyers come through, lower price points. We're continuing to see that in the market, and inevitably they will grow and mature into serious collectors. We're seeing new collectors buying at an impressive level, very, very impressive level, from different places as well above that. So the market's undergoing change. That's inevitable. There's older generations of collectors that aren't as active now as they had been. The market dynamics broadly clearly don't help. But on the other hand, as the contemporary art zeitgeist continues to manifest, we're seeing more and more young people come into market. Art Basel Hong Kong had record attendance in March. We have every indication that Basel this week will be very well attended, and we're really excited into leaning in across that and creating more connectivity and lowering barriers to entry for collectors and art lovers of the future.
Well, actually, just finally, to bring it all back to what I guess we have to increasingly think of as Art Basel. If there are people who are tuning in who may be in the vicinity thinking of going for the first time, what would your advice be to a newcomer to Art Basel?
Well, give yourself time to explore the fair. I mean, what's beautiful about Art Basel's ecosystem is, of course, one can go and discover true masterworks by the Richters, the Rothkos, so on, and the Basquiats of the world that we all look to. But it's a site for discovery. 289 galleries. They come from over 40 countries from throughout the world. There are interesting positions throughout the fair to discover. And I always encourage anybody to really spend time, go see the masterworks, but go to the outer edges, spread out throughout the Messe, go to Unlimited, go to Parkour, go to the museums. There's a lot to see and discover, and I think there's a lot for everybody.
That was Noah Horowitz, CEO of Art Basel, speaking to me earlier. Art Basel is, of course, underway in Basel as of today. And that is all for this edition of the Monocle Daily. Thanks to our panels today, Myriam, Zumbühl, Priska, Amstutz and Chris Chermak. Thanks also to Julie Norman. Today's show was produced by Chris Chermak and Desiree Bandley here in Zurich. Our sound engineer was Elliot Greenfield in London. I'm Andrew Muller here in Zurich. The Daily is back also in Zurich at the same time tomorrow. Thanks for listening.